The stars looked the same as they always did from the bridge of the Defiant. Commander Jake Morrison stood with his hands behind his back, watching the endless darkness of space. He had been patrolling this sector for 3 months now, and nothing interesting had happened. The colonies out here were peaceful, farmers and miners who just wanted to live their lives far from Earth's crowded cities. "Sir, we have something on the sensors," Lieutenant Kevin Barnes called out from his station. His voice had an edge to it that made Jake turn around quickly. "What is it?" Jake walked over to look at the display screen. "Unknown ships. Big ones. They just appeared at the edge of the system." Kevin's fingers moved across his controls, bringing up more information. "I count 50 vessels. They're not like anything in our database." Jake felt his stomach tighten. 50 unknown ships was not a good sign. Humanity had been exploring space for over a century, and they had never met another intelligent species. Until now, apparently. "Send a standard greeting message, all frequencies," Jake ordered. "And get me a line to Admiral Crawford on Earth." The message went out into space. Minutes passed with no response. The unknown ships kept moving forward, getting closer to the human colonies. Jake watched them approach, feeling more worried with each passing moment. "Sir, we're getting a response," Kevin said. "It's not audio. They're sending data." The screen filled with symbols and images. Jake couldn't read any of it, but the meaning was clear enough. There were pictures of the human colonies, pictures of Earth. And there was a symbol that appeared over and over again. It looked like a closed fist. "Are they threatening us?" Jake asked. Before Kevin could answer, the screen changed. Now there was a creature looking back at them. It stood on 2 legs like a human, but that was where the similarity ended. The creature was at least 8 feet tall with dark red skin that looked thick as armor. Its face had 4 eyes arranged in a square pattern, and its mouth was full of sharp teeth. When it spoke, the translator struggled to make sense of the words. "Small ones. Weak ones. You will surrender your worlds. You have 30 days. Resistance will end in death." The screen went black. Jake stared at it for a long moment. Around the bridge, his crew sat in shocked silence. "Did that thing just demand we surrender everything?" Kevin finally asked. "Yes," Jake said quietly. "Yes, it did." Far away on Mars, Dr. Amy Sullivan watched the same message in her laboratory. She was a xenobiologist, someone who studied alien life. For years, she had wondered what other species might be out there among the stars. Now she had her answer, and it was terrifying. Amy played the message again, studying the creature carefully. It was big and strong, that much was obvious. Its skin looked tough, maybe even bulletproof. Those teeth suggested it was a predator, something that hunted and killed. She pulled up comparison data from Earth's animals. The creature had similarities to crocodiles and bears, both apex predators from Earth's past. "We're in trouble," she said to herself. Her assistant came running into the lab. "Dr. Sullivan, did you see it?" "I saw it," Amy said. "Send everything we have to military command. They need to know what we're dealing with." She started writing her report. Physical advantages, size, strength, natural armor, predatory instincts, probable combat effectiveness. Extremely high. Recommended response. She paused at that line. What could she recommend? Humanity had never fought a war in space before. They had ships and weapons, but they were designed for defense against asteroids and pirates, not against 50 massive warships. Amy typed slowly. Recommended response. Do not engage in direct combat. Seek diplomatic solution. If conflict is unavoidable, use guerrilla tactics and avoid confrontation. On the Vraxian flagship, High Warlord Krelnax looked at the data his scanners had collected on the humans. He laughed, a deep rumbling sound that made his subordinate step back nervously. "Look at them," he said, pointing at the images of humans on his screen. So small, so weak. No armor, no claws, no natural weapons at all. How did such pathetic creatures ever survive long enough to build ships? His second-in-command, a warrior named Epsilon, looked at the data more carefully. My lord, they have spread across many worlds. That suggests they are at least intelligent. Intelligence means nothing without strength, Krelnax said. We have conquered 200 species in 4,000 years. Most of them were intelligent. All of them are now slaves or extinct. These humans will be no different. He pulled up records from their previous conquests. The Torelli had been strong, with thick shells and powerful claws. It had taken the Vraxian Dominion 10 years to defeat them. The Zinthari had been fast and clever, using advanced technology. They had lasted 15 years. But the humans? Krelnax estimated it would take less than 3 months. They have no chance, he said confidently. Prepare the first wave. We will take their worlds and add them to the Dominion. Their surrender or their extinction, the choice is theirs. Back on the Defiant, Jake Morrison received orders from Earth. Admiral Crawford's message was short and direct. Do not engage. Fall back to defensive positions. Buy us time. Jake understood what that meant. Earth needed time to prepare. The colonies needed time to evacuate civilians. And he needed to figure out how to fight an enemy that seemed unbeatable. Kevin, send a message to all human ships in the sector. Tell them to rally at Epsilon Reach. We're going to make a stand. A stand, sir? Against 50 ships? We don't have a choice, Jake said. If we run, they'll just chase us all the way to Earth. Better to fight them here on our terms. He looked out at the stars again. Somewhere out there, an alien fleet was coming to destroy everything humanity had built. They thought humans were weak. They thought this would be easy. Jake smiled grimly. They were about to learn that humans didn't give up. Ever. The 30-day countdown had begun. The 30 days passed too quickly. Jake Morrison had gathered every human ship he could find at Epsilon Reach, a small colony on the edge of human space. He had 18 ships total. The Vraxians had 50. The math was not good. They're coming out of hyperspace now, Kevin Barnes announced from his station. Right where we expected them. Jake watched as the Vraxian fleet appeared on his screens. The alien ships were huge, at least 3 times the size of human vessels. They moved in a perfect formation like they had done this 1,000 times before. They probably had. All ships, this is Morrison. Remember the plan? Hit and run. Don't try to stand and fight. We're faster than they are. Use that advantage. Jake took a deep breath. Good hunting. The Vraxian fleet moved forward in a straight line toward the colony. They didn't even try to hide or use tactics. They didn't think they needed to. That was their first mistake. Jake's fleet split into 3 groups and came at the Vraxians from different angles. The human ships were smaller and faster, darting in like insects around a giant. They fired missiles and energy weapons, then spun away before the Vraxians could return fire. On the Vraxian flagship, Krelnax watched with growing annoyance. The humans were running away like cowards. They would hit his ships and then flee before his gunners could target them properly. This is beneath us, he growled. They fight like frightened children. All ships increase speed, chase them down. That was their second mistake. When the Vraxian ships broke formation to chase the humans, they became easier targets. Jake had planned for this. Hidden in the asteroid field nearby were more human ships, waiting in silence with their power systems turned off. Now! Jake shouted into his communicator. 20 more human ships powered up and opened fire. The Vraxians were caught between 2 forces. Their shields held against the first attacks, but the humans kept firing. They used nuclear missiles, electromagnetic pulses, and kinetic weapons, anything that could damage the alien ships. The first Vraxian ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light, then a second one, then a third. Krelnax couldn't believe what he was seeing. His ships were dying. The small, weak humans were actually destroying his fleet. He roared orders at his crew, demanding they fight back. But the humans were everywhere. They moved too fast, coordinated too well. "Fall back! Regroup!" he finally ordered. But the humans didn't let them regroup. They followed the Vraxians, harassing them, picking off any ship that fell behind. By the time the aliens reached the edge of the system, they had lost 8 ships. 8 ships against an enemy that was supposed to be weak. On the surface of New Montana Colony, Commander Nicole Hayes prepared her Marines for what was coming. The space battle had gone better than expected, but some Vraxian ships had made it past Jake's fleet. They were landing on the planet right now. "Remember your training," Nicole told her troops. "These aliens are bigger and stronger than us. Don't try to fight them head-on. Use the terrain, use ambushes, make them pay for every step forward." The first Vraxian ground troops came down from orbit in massive dropships. When the doors opened, warriors poured out, roaring their battle cries. They stood 8 feet tall in their armor, carrying weapons that could punch through concrete. They expected the humans to run. Instead, the humans opened fire from hidden positions. Snipers took shots from buildings. Machine gun nests fired from behind barricades. Mines exploded under the Vraxian advance. The aliens were tough. Their armor absorbed shots that would have killed a human. But the humans kept firing. They aimed for joints in the armor, for the face, for any weak spot they could find. And when the Vraxians got close, the humans fell back to the next defensive position. One Vraxian warrior chased a group of Marines into a building. He thought he had them cornered. Then the building exploded. The humans had rigged it with explosives and detonated it remotely. The warrior died buried under rubble. This happened again and again. The Vraxians would take a position, and then the humans would blow it up or collapse it. The aliens were strong, but they fought like they always did, with direct assaults and overwhelming force. The humans fought like they were defending their homes because they were. Nicole watched from her command post as the battle raged. Her forces were taking casualties, but the Vraxians were taking more. She had studied history before joining the military. Humans had been fighting wars for thousands of years. They had learned hard lessons about combat, about tactics, about refusing to give up. "They think they're the best warriors in the galaxy," she said to her second in command. "They've never fought humans before." In space, Jake's fleet continued to harass the Vraxian ships. They used the asteroid field as cover, popping out to fire and then disappearing. The Vraxians tried to adapt, but they were too slow. Their tactics were rigid, based on thousands of years of doing the same thing against weaker enemies. Lieutenant Kevin Barnes discovered something interesting. "Sir, the Vraxian ships always respond to attacks the same way. They turn to face the threat and fire all weapons. It's like they're programmed." Jake saw the opportunity immediately. "If we can predict their movements, we can set traps. Send that information to all ships." The human fleet started using the Vraxian predictability against them. They would attack from one direction, and when the aliens turned to face them, another human ship would hit them from behind. The Vraxians lost 3 more ships this way. Krell Nax was furious. He had brought 50 ships to conquer these pathetic humans. Now he had only 39 ships left, and the battle had been going on for just 2 days. 2 days. Most species surrendered after seeing the Vraxian fleet. These humans were actually fighting back. "Send a message to the High Council," he ordered. "Request reinforcements." His officers looked at each other nervously. Requesting reinforcements meant admitting weakness. The High Warlord had never needed help before. "Do it!" Krell Nax roared. On New Montana, the ground battle continued for 3 more days. The Vraxians controlled about 30% of the colony, but they had paid a terrible price. Hundreds of their warriors were dead. The humans had lost people too, but they kept fighting. They never surrendered, never gave up, even when they were clearly losing. One group of Marines was surrounded in a warehouse. They had no way out. A Vraxian commander approached with a surrender offer. The Marines responded by detonating all their remaining explosives, destroying the warehouse and killing every Vraxian nearby. The Marines died too, but they took the enemy with them. When news of this reached the other Vraxian warriors, something changed. They started to fear the humans. These small creatures fought like demons. They refused to surrender even when death was certain. They turned every building into a fortress, every street into a killing zone. After 5 days, the Vraxians withdrew from New Montana. They had taken too many casualties and gained nothing worth keeping. Commander Nicole Hayes stood in the ruins of her colony and counted the cost. Half her Marines were dead. Most of the colony was destroyed. But they had won. The aliens had retreated. Jake Morrison received the news from the surface and allowed himself a small smile. The Vraxians had come expecting an easy victory. They had gotten the fight of their lives. His fleet had destroyed 11 enemy ships, and the ground forces had killed hundreds of alien warriors. But he knew this was just the beginning. The Vraxians would come back with more ships, more warriors. They wouldn't make the same mistakes twice. What the Vraxians didn't know was that humans learned too. And humans never forgot. Every battle gave them more information, more tactical knowledge. The next time the aliens came, humanity would be ready. The second wave arrived 3 months later. This time, Krelnax brought 300 ships. He was not going to make the same mistakes again. The humans would be crushed under the weight of pure military power. They learned nothing, Admiral Lisa Crawford said from her command center on Earth. She was watching the Vraxian fleet approach through long-range sensors. 300 ships was a massive force, but humanity had not been idle during the past 3 months. Every colony had been fortified. Underground bunkers had been built to protect civilians. Weapons factories had been working day and night. And most importantly, humanity had learned how the Vraxians fought. Knowledge was power, and now humans had both. "Send the signal," Lisa ordered. "Let them know we're not hiding." Across human space, thousands of small ships powered up. Fighters, bombers, mining vessels converted into warships, private yachts with missile pods attached. If it could fly and carry a weapon, humanity had pressed it into service. They couldn't match the Vraxians in ship quality, but they could match them in numbers. Captain Brandon Cole sat in his fighter, one of 800 pilots ready to launch. His ship was tiny compared to a Vraxian warship, barely bigger than a car. But it was fast and carried 4 nuclear-tipped missiles. "All fighters, this is Cole. Remember, we're not trying to destroy their big ships. We're trying to overwhelm their defenses. Get in close. Fire everything, get out. Make them pay attention to us." The Vraxian fleet entered the human colony system of Proxima. They expected to see a defensive fleet waiting for them. Instead, they saw nothing. The space around the colony appeared empty. "Where are they?" Krelnax demanded. "Scan the entire system." That's when the swarm hit them. 800 human fighters came from every direction at once. They had been hiding behind planets, asteroids, even the colony itself. Now they descended on the Vraxian fleet like angry hornets. The Vraxians opened fire with their point defense systems, but there were too many targets. For every fighter they destroyed, 3 more got through. Missiles streaked through space, slamming into shields and armor. Individual fighters were no threat to the massive Vraxian ships. But 800 fighters firing together was a different story. Brandon Cole's fighter darted between 2 Vraxian cruisers, firing his missiles at point-blank range. He didn't wait to see if they hit. He was already accelerating away, pushing his fighter to maximum speed. Behind him, explosions lit up space. "That's for New Montana," he shouted. But the fighters were just a distraction. While the Vraxians focused on the swarm of small ships, larger human vessels moved into position. Commander Jake Morrison was leading a fleet of 50 warships that had been hiding in the outer system. They had learned from the first battle. Hit the enemy when they're distracted. Hit them hard, then disappear before they can respond. Jake's fleet opened fire with everything they had. Long-range missiles crossed millions of kilometers of space in minutes. Energy weapons lanced out, targeting Vraxian engines and weapon systems. The Vraxians were caught between the fighter swarm and the main fleet. "Turn to face the larger ships," Krelnax ordered, but his fleet was too spread out, trying to deal with fighters attacking from all directions. When they turned to engage Jake's fleet, the fighters hit them from behind. On the surface of Proxima Colony, engineer Chris Patterson watched the space battle on his screens. He was responsible for the colony's defenses, and he had prepared a surprise for any Vraxians who made it to the ground. "They think we'll fight like last time," Chris said to his team. "They're wrong." The colony had been evacuated weeks ago. Every civilian was safe in underground bunkers that could survive orbital bombardment. The buildings above were empty. Or at least, they appeared empty. Chris had spent 3 months turning the entire colony into one giant trap. Every building had been rigged with explosives. The streets were lined with mines. Even the power plant had been converted into a massive bomb. If the Vraxians wanted Proxima, they could have it, but it would cost them dearly. In space, the battle raged for hours. The Vraxians were starting to adapt to the human tactics, but it was too late. They had already lost 30 ships, and their fleet was running low on ammunition. The fighters kept coming in waves, never giving them a moment to rest. Then something happened that Krelnax did not expect. Human ships started appearing from hyperspace behind his fleet. These were reinforcements from other colonies. Humanity had created a communication network that allowed them to call for help quickly. Within hours of the battle starting, ships from 6 different colonies had arrived to join the fight. Sergeant Amy Rodriguez was aboard one of these reinforcement ships. She led a special forces team trained for boarding operations. While the main battle distracted the Vraxians, her team approached a damaged alien cruiser in a stealth shuttle. "Remember the briefing," Amy told her squad. "These Vraxians are tough, but they've never fought in close quarters against humans. They're too big, too slow in tight spaces. That's our advantage." The shuttle latched onto the Vraxian hull, and Amy's team cut through the armor with plasma torches. They entered the alien ship with weapons ready. Inside, they found corridors built for creatures 8 feet tall. The Vraxians could barely move without ducking. Humans could run at full speed. Amy's team moved through the ship like ghosts, setting charges on critical systems. When they encountered Vraxian warriors, the fighting was brutal. The aliens were stronger, but humans were faster and fought with a viciousness that shocked their enemies. One of Amy's soldiers, a man named Danny Price, tackled a Vraxian warrior twice his size and stabbed it repeatedly with a combat knife until it stopped moving. "Humans are crazy," a wounded Vraxian warrior muttered in his own language before Amy's team left him behind. They set the final charges on the ship's reactor and evacuated. The cruiser exploded 10 minutes later. It was the first Vraxian ship destroyed from the inside, but it wouldn't be the last. Dr. Amy Sullivan watched the battle reports coming in from Mars. She had been analyzing Vraxian biology for months now, looking for weaknesses. She had found several. The aliens were strong and tough, but they had slow metabolisms. They needed to rest frequently. Their healing was slow compared to humans. And most importantly, they had very low birth rates. Every Vraxian warrior that died would take years to replace. "They can't sustain these losses," Amy told Admiral Crawford over a secure channel. "Their species is built for domination, not attrition warfare. If we can keep killing them faster than they can replace their losses, we'll win eventually." "How long is eventually?" Lisa asked. "Years, maybe decades. But we will win." The battle for Proxima lasted for 2 weeks. The Vraxians tried everything. They attempted orbital bombardment, but the human defenses on the ground shot down most of their missiles. They tried landing ground troops, but Chris Patterson's traps killed hundreds of warriors before they realized the entire colony was booby-trapped. They tried to blockade the planet, but human supply ships kept slipping through using stealth technology. Finally, Krelnax accepted the truth. He could not take this colony without losing his entire fleet. He had already lost 180 ships. The humans were still fighting with the same intensity as when the battle started. They showed no signs of fatigue, no willingness to surrender. "Withdraw," he ordered quietly. It was the first time in his long military career that he had retreated from a weaker enemy. As the Vraxian fleet limped away from Proxima, Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Defiant and watched them go. His ship was damaged. Half his fleet was destroyed, but they had won. Again. "They'll come back," Kevin Barnes said. "I know," Jake replied, "but each time they come back, we'll be ready. We'll learn from every battle. We'll get stronger." Brandon Cole landed his fighter after the battle and climbed out exhausted. He had been flying for 14 hours straight. His squadron had lost half its pilots, but they had stopped 300 enemy ships with nothing but small fighters and determination. "Did we really just do that?" his co-pilot asked. "Yeah," Brandon said, looking up at the stars where the Vraxian fleet was retreating. "Yeah, we did." Back on the Vraxian flagship, Krelnax stared at casualty reports. He had lost nearly 200 ships and thousands of warriors. The humans had lost more in total numbers, but they didn't seem to care. They just kept fighting. For the first time in his life, the High Warlord felt fear. The Vraxian High Council refused to believe Krelnax's reports. A species of small, weak creatures had destroyed nearly half of 2 attack waves? It was impossible. It had to be lies or cowardice. "You shame the Dominion," the council leader told Krelnax over the communication channel. "You will lead the third wave yourself. 1,000 ships. If you fail again, you will be executed for incompetence." Krelnax knew this was his last chance. 1,000 ships represented a quarter of the entire Vraxian military. The High Council was committing massive resources to crush humanity. He would not fail this time. He could not. But while the Vraxians prepared their largest fleet ever, humanity was not sitting idle. Admiral Lisa Crawford had a bold plan. If the aliens were bringing 1,000 ships to attack human space, humanity would strike at Vraxian space first. "We've been defending," Lisa said to her senior commanders. "It's time to attack. General Webster, your ground forces are ready?" General Paul Webster nodded. He was a career soldier who had fought in Earth's last war 20 years ago. He understood something important about humans. They were not the strongest species or the fastest, but they could endure. They could fight for days, weeks, months without rest. And they never gave up. "My troops are ready," Paul said. "We've studied the Vraxian biology reports from Dr. Sullivan. We know their weaknesses now." Lisa looked at Commander Nicole Hayes, who had been promoted after her defense of New Montana. "You're leading the special operations teams?" "Yes, ma'am," Nicole said. "We've trained 50 boarding crews. We know how to fight inside their ships now. We know how to kill them in close quarters." The plan was risky. While Krelnax's third wave approached human space, Lisa would send fast attack fleets into Vraxian territory. They would hit supply depots, shipyards, and colony worlds. They would force the Vraxians to fight on 2 fronts. The third wave arrived at the human colony of New Earth. Krelnax had learned from his previous failures. This time, his fleet moved slowly and carefully. Scouts checked for ambushes. Ships stayed in tight formation. He would not be surprised again. But humans had learned too. Jake Morrison was waiting with the largest human fleet ever assembled. 200 warships, 3,000 fighters, and countless support vessels. Behind them was New Earth, a planet that had been fortified until it was practically a fortress. "All ships, this is Admiral Crawford." Lisa's voice came over every ship's communication system. Today we show these aliens what humanity really is. We don't surrender. We don't retreat. We fight until we win. Good luck to all of you. The Battle of New Earth began with a missile exchange that lit up space for millions of kilometers. Both sides fired everything they had. Vraxian ships had stronger shields, but human missiles were smarter, able to dodge and weave. The first hour of the battle saw 20 ships destroyed on each side. Brandon Cole led his fighter wing straight into the heart of the Vraxian formation. It was suicide, but it was also necessary. The fighters needed to disrupt the alien formation, create chaos that the bigger human ships could exploit. "For humanity!" Brandon screamed as his fighter dodged enemy fire. He launched all his missiles at a Vraxian battleship, then had to spin wildly to avoid getting hit by point defense fire. Around him, other fighters were doing the same thing. Some didn't make it, but the ones that survived were taking a terrible toll on the enemy. Meanwhile, in Vraxian space, Nicole Hayes and her boarding teams were attacking a major shipyard. They had approached and captured Vraxian shuttles, using codes they had stolen from previous battles. By the time the aliens realized they were under attack, it was too late. Nicole's team moved through the shipyard like trained killers. They set charges on partially built warships. They sabotaged fuel storage tanks. They uploaded viruses into computer systems. And when Vraxian guards confronted them, they fought with a brutality that shocked their enemies. One Vraxian warrior grabbed a human soldier named Katie Ross. The warrior was 3 times her size and thought the fight was over. Katie pulled out a knife and stabbed the alien in the throat 7 times before it let her go. Then she picked up her rifle and kept fighting. "Humans don't quit," Nicole said as she led her team back to their shuttle. Behind them, the shipyard exploded in a chain reaction that destroyed 3 nearly completed warships. Back at New Earth, the battle had been raging for 3 days. Both sides were exhausted. The Vraxians had lost 300 ships. The humans had lost 80, but neither side would back down. Krelnax was desperate. He had committed everything to this attack. If he failed here, the Dominion would execute him. But more importantly, he was starting to realize something terrible. The humans might actually win this war. He watched his tactical displays and saw human ships everywhere. They fought with a coordination that seemed impossible. Every ship knew exactly where to be, exactly when to fire. It was like they shared one mind. What Krelnax didn't know was that humans had developed advanced communication networks. Every ship was connected to every other ship. Information flowed instantly. When one captain discovered a weakness in Vraxian tactics, every other captain knew about it within seconds. Dr. Amy Sullivan had been right. Humans had evolved as pack hunters, working together to bring down prey much larger than themselves. Now they were applying those same instincts to space warfare. General Paul Webster's ground forces landed on a Vraxian colony world called Vraxis Prime. It was a bold move, attacking the enemy's home territory. But Paul knew that the best defense was a good offense. The Vraxian defenders were shocked when human soldiers poured out of landing craft. These humans moved fast, worked together perfectly, and showed no fear. The Vraxians were used to enemies who surrendered when faced with superior force. Humans just fought harder. One squad of Marines held a bridge against 50 Vraxian warriors for 6 hours. They ran out of ammunition and fought with knives. When reinforcements finally arrived, they found 5 humans still alive and 32 dead Vraxians. The humans had refused to retreat even though they were hopelessly outnumbered. At New Earth, the battle reached its climax on the 5th day. Krelnax made a desperate decision. He would lead a direct assault on the human flagship himself. If he could kill Admiral Crawford, maybe the human fleet would fall apart. His battleship pushed through the human lines, taking massive damage but refusing to stop. Jake Morrison saw what the Vraxian commander was trying to do and moved his ship to intercept. "He wants Crawford. He'll have to go through us first," Jake said. The 2 flagships met in the middle of the battlefield. They exchanged fire at point-blank range. their shields sparking and failing. Inside both ships, crews struggled to keep their vessels alive while damage mounted. "Hull breach on Deck 7, Kevin Barnes shouted. "We're venting atmosphere." "Seal it off," Jake ordered. "Keep firing." On the Vraxian flagship, Krelnax was having the same problems. Human weapons were tearing his ship apart. He had underestimated these creatures again. They were not weak. They were not prey. They were predators, just like his own species. Maybe even more dangerous. "My lord, we must retreat," his second officer pleaded. "No!" Krelnax roared. "I will not shame the Dominion again! I will not!" His words were cut off as a human missile penetrated the ship's damaged shields and struck the bridge directly. The explosion killed Krelnax instantly. Without their commander, the Vraxian fleet began to fall apart. Ships that had been fighting in coordination started to act independently. Some tried to retreat. Others tried to continue the fight. The humans pressed their advantage, destroying ship after ship. By the time the battle ended, the Vraxians had lost over 500 ships. Their third wave, the largest military force they had ever assembled, was destroyed. Less than 500 ships escaped to return to Vraxian space. Jake Morrison stood on his damaged bridge and watched the alien ships flee. His own ship was barely functional. Half his crew was dead or wounded, but they had won the most important battle of the war. "Get me a damage report," he said tiredly, "and someone find out if Admiral Crawford is still alive." "I'm here, Commander," Lisa Crawford's voice came over the communication system. "Battered but alive. As is humanity." Across Vraxian space, news of the defeat spread quickly. 3 waves had been sent to conquer humanity. 3 waves had been destroyed, and now humans were attacking Vraxian worlds, something no enemy had ever done before. The High Council met in emergency session. For the first time in 4,000 years, the Dominion faced the possibility of defeat. They had always been the hunters. Now, they were being hunted. "We must seek peace," one council member said quietly. The others looked at him in shock, but no one disagreed. The message arrived at Earth 3 weeks after the Battle of New Earth. It was short and written in broken human language. The Vraxian Dominion wanted to negotiate peace terms. Admiral Lisa Crawford read the message several times. After months of brutal warfare, after losing thousands of ships and hundreds of thousands of lives, the aliens finally understood. They could not defeat humanity. "Should we accept?" General Paul Webster asked. He was still commanding operations in Vraxian space, where human forces had captured 3 colony worlds. "We should," Lisa said, "but not on their terms, on ours." The peace conference was held on a neutral space station operated by the Zinthari, a species that had remained neutral during the war. Lisa Crawford represented humanity. Counselor Vextra represented the Vraxian Dominion, and Observer Zintar of the Zinthari documented everything for the galactic community. Vextra was a typical Vraxian, tall and heavily muscled with dark red skin. But when he looked at Lisa Crawford, there was something in his 4 eyes that had never been there before when a Vraxian looked at another species. There was respect and fear. "You have fought well," Vextra said in careful human language. "The Dominion wishes to end hostilities." "The Dominion attacked us," Lisa replied coldly. "You demanded our surrender. You killed our people. Now you want peace because you're losing." Vextra could not deny this. The third wave's defeat had shocked the entire Vraxian civilization. They had sent over 1,300 ships to conquer humanity. Only a few hundred had returned. The rest were destroyed, along with tens of thousands of Vraxian warriors. "What are your terms?" Vextra asked. Lisa pulled out a datapad with the human demands. They had been carefully prepared over the past 3 weeks. "First, the Dominion will return all territory taken from the species you conquered in the past century. Second, you will reduce your military by 50%. Third, You will pay reparations to humanity for the damage caused by your attacks. Fourth, you will allow human observers to monitor your compliance with these terms. Vextra's face showed shock. These terms are harsh. They will weaken the Dominion greatly. You should have thought about that before you attacked us, Lisa said. These are our terms. Accept them or we continue the war. The truth was that humanity was exhausted. They had won the battles, but it had cost them dearly. Every colony had been damaged. Their fleet was a shadow of its former strength. But Vextra didn't know that. He only knew that 3 massive attack waves had been destroyed, and human forces were currently occupying Vraxian worlds. I must consult with the High Council, Vextra said. While the Vraxians debated, observer Zintar approached Lisa privately. The Zinthari were a peaceful species that valued knowledge above all else. Admiral Crawford, I have been documenting this conflict, Zintar said. I must ask you something. How did you defeat the Vraxians? They have conquered 200 species over 4,000 years. Why could you stop them when no one else could? Lisa thought about the question carefully. Because we're human, she finally said. The Vraxians looked at us and saw weakness. Small bodies, no natural armor, no claws or fangs. They thought we were prey. But you are not prey, Zintar said. No, we're not. Humans evolved on a death world. Earth was brutal. We survived ice ages, droughts, predators that were bigger and stronger than us. We survived because we worked together. We survived because we refused to give up. We survived because we learned to fight smarter, not harder. She pulled up images on her datapad, showing Earth's history. Wars that had lasted decades. Battles where humans had refused to surrender even when defeat was certain. Inventions created under pressure of survival. We've been fighting for our entire existence as a species, Lisa continued. The Vraxians fight because it's their culture. We fight because it's in our DNA. Every human carries the genes of survivors. People who refused to quit when everything was against them. Zintar listened carefully and took notes. There is more, I think. Yes. The Vraxians fight as individuals even when they're in groups. Each warrior wants personal glory. But humans fight as a unit. We protect each other. When one of us falls, the others fight harder. It's called pack bonding. We form emotional connections with our fellow soldiers. We die for each other because they're not just comrades, they're family. Ambassador Kevin Turner joined the conversation. He had been sent to assist Lisa with the negotiations. There's also our endurance, he added. Humans can fight for days without rest. We can march for hours. We can survive on minimal food and water. The Vraxians are stronger, but they tire quickly. In a long war, we'll always outlast them. Dr. Amy Sullivan arrived at the space station the next day. She brought detailed reports on Vraxian biology that she had compiled during the war. Lisa asked her to present the information to Zintar for his records. The Vraxians are apex predators on their homeworld, Amy explained. They evolved to hunt large prey through overwhelming physical force. They're incredibly strong and tough, but they have slow metabolisms. They need to rest frequently after exertion. Their reproduction rate is also very slow. A Vraxian female produces maybe 5 offspring in her lifetime. She pulled up comparison data. Humans, by contrast, evolved as persistence hunters. We chased prey for hours until it collapsed from exhaustion. We can go days with little sleep, and our reproduction rate is much higher. We can replace our losses quickly. The Vraxians cannot. So in a war of attrition, humanity will always win, Zintar said. Exactly. And there's one more thing. Amy pulled up psychological profiles. Humans are capable of extreme violence when threatened. We can turn off our empathy and become efficient killers, but we can also cooperate on a massive scale. We built a civilization that spans dozens of star systems by working together. The Vraxians conquer through force. We build through cooperation. After 5 days of deliberation, Vextra returned with the High Council's decision. They accepted the human terms, all of them. The Dominion would reduce its military, free conquered species, and pay reparations. It was the greatest defeat in Vraxian history. "There is one thing I must know," Vextra said to Lisa before leaving. 3 waves, over 1,300 ships, tens of thousands of warriors. None returned to tell us what happened. None. How did you do it? Lisa met his eyes steadily. "We didn't let them. Every battle we made sure there were no survivors. We jammed your distress calls. We destroyed escape pods. We hunted down every ship that tried to flee. We wanted your High Council to send more ships, more warriors. Because every ship you sent, we destroyed. And you couldn't learn from your mistakes because no one survived to tell you what we were doing." The color drained from Vextra's face. "That is ruthless." "That is survival," Lisa corrected. "You came to our space intending to kill or enslave us. We responded with total war. You wanted to see what humans are capable of? Now you know." Vextra left the station shortly after. The peace treaty was signed. The war was over. Observer Zintar spent the next month compiling his report on the Human-Vraxian War. He titled it, "No One Returned After Battling Humanity." The report spread quickly through the galactic community. Every species read it. Every species learned what had happened. The report detailed human tactics, biology, psychology, and combat effectiveness. It explained how a species with no natural weapons had defeated the Dominion. It described human endurance, adaptability, and refusal to surrender, but most importantly, it included a warning. "Humans appear weak by physical standards," Zintar wrote. "This is a fatal error in judgment. They are perhaps the most dangerous species in the galaxy because they combine intelligence, endurance, and violence in ways never seen before. They fight as coordinated units. They refuse defeat even when death is certain. They learn from every battle and adapt quickly. Most importantly, they have no concept of acceptable losses. They will fight until they win or until they are extinct. There is no middle ground with humans." The report concluded with a simple recommendation that every species took to heart. Do not provoke humanity. Do not threaten their worlds. Do not assume their size indicates weakness. The Dominion sent 3 waves. None returned. Let that be a lesson to all who would challenge Earth and its children. Back on Earth, Jake Morrison retired from active service. He had fought in every major battle of the war and survived. He bought a small house on the coast and spent his days looking at the ocean. Sometimes at night, he would look up at the stars and remember the battles. Brandon Cole received a medal for his heroism during the war. He had flown over 100 combat missions and survived when most of his squadron had not. He continued flying, but now he trained the next generation of fighter pilots. "Be ready," he told them. "The Vraxians won't attack again, but there might be other species out there. Stay ready." Commander Nicole Hayes became the head of Human Special Forces. Her boarding tactics had been decisive in several key battles. She made sure that every soldier under her command knew how to fight in space, on the ground, and inside enemy ships. "We won because we adapted," she told new recruits. "Never stop learning. Never stop adapting." Dr. Amy Sullivan continued her research on alien biology. She had offers from several universities to teach, but she preferred the lab. She wanted to understand more species, learn their weaknesses, prepare humanity for future conflicts. "Knowledge is our greatest weapon," she often said. Admiral Lisa Crawford remained in command of Earth's military. She oversaw the reconstruction of the fleet and the fortification of human space. She made sure that humanity would never be caught unprepared again. Under her leadership, humanity became one of the most powerful species in the galaxy. The Vraxian Dominion kept its promises. They freed conquered species. They reduced their military. They paid reparations. But more than that, they changed. The warrior culture that had defined them for thousands of years began to shift. They had learned that being the strongest did not mean being unbeatable. Young Vraxians grew up hearing stories about the war with humanity, stories about how no ships returned, stories about humans who fought until death, stories that taught them respect and caution. The humans were small, yes, but they were deadly. 50 years later, a Vraxian diplomat visited Earth for the first time since the war. He stood in a museum dedicated to the conflict and looked at displays showing the battles. He saw pictures of human soldiers, pilots, and commanders, and he understood finally what his ancestors had failed to grasp. These humans were predators, not the kind that relied on size and strength, the kind that relied on intelligence, endurance, and absolute refusal to accept defeat. The kind that would chase you for days, weeks, months until you collapsed. The kind that worked together so well they moved as one organism. The kind that learned from every mistake and never made the same error twice. The galaxy had a new rule now, one that every species followed. It was never written down officially, but everyone knew it. Everyone respected it. Never attack humanity. No one returned after battling them. No one ever would.